We have a couple of really interesting reports that I want to get into. I want to talk a little bit about some of these different things that are kind of coming out. One of the things that we had heard from some Raiders sources, right? I think it was The Athletic that had initially reported this about 2 months back, was that the Las Vegas Raiders were actually shopping tight end Michael Mayer. And it has not happened yet, but now we got an updated report. I think this is coming out from someone that's a lot more of a better Raiders inside source. That is Vincent Bonsignore, and he is basically saying that the Las Vegas Raiders have no interest in trading tight end Michael Mayer. Of course, this is coming out by Vinny Bonsignore. And I'd love to hear this report right here. I've been watching a lot of tape, specifically around tight ends, running backs, wide receivers. Over the past 6 months is something that I've been kind of getting into a little bit more. I started with the NFL draft process. I've been going to scouting school specifically for those positions. And tight end is a position I've been focusing in on a lot, and watching Michael Mayer just yesterday, watching him a little bit earlier today, the guy I think is going to be a really, really good tight end in the NFL. Now, I talked about this just a couple days ago. Michael Mayer might not ever have a 1,500-yard season, especially with the Raiders, because he's not going to get the targets. But if he did get the targets, if he did get that opportunity, I think he could be a very, very good tight end. Now, his impact for the Raiders will still be really good this season, in my opinion. I think Michael Mayer, if he has 75 targets, will end up having 60 catches. I think he'll have 700-800 yards, and I think he'll be a really good blocking tight end for the Raiders, and his impact will be absolutely felt. I love the fact that the Raiders are not actually shopping him, and they plan to keep him for the next 2 seasons, because I think he's going to have an absolute huge impact for the Raiders. Never overlook the fact that at the end of the day, the best way to win football games is to have good football players. At no point do teams win without having good players. And, you can never have too many good players. And I think with Michael Mayer, you've already put the investment into him. I think it makes sense just to kind of roll forward with him. But we also got something else that kind of came out with Mayer. Pro Football Talk kind of put it together, but basically they took what Michael Mayer had to say. Specifically, Michael Mayer was on the Raiders YouTube channel. I believe it was yesterday or the day before. But Michael Mayer basically told us that he's expected to have a big role in Chip Kelly's offense. If you guys remember last year, I felt like Michael Mayer was kind of put to the side in the Luke Getsy scheme. I felt like Getsy came out with 3, 4, or 5 wide receivers way too often. And I feel like a guy like Michael Mayer was kind of put, into a role where he wasn't being featured enough. And I know he missed a portion of the season last year. I think he missed the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. But I feel like Michael Mayer was not utilized properly in that scheme. And for the Chip Kelly scheme, this guy's actually expected to be utilized. And in the interview, and I suggest you guys go check it out yourselves. You guys can just go to the Raiders YouTube channel. But in that, he said some interesting things. I want to kind of read to you guys one segment of what he had to say, because it kind of talks to what we should expect out of Michael Mayer. Mayer said, with me and Brock Bowers, it's pretty interesting because we do a lot of 12 personnel stuff. And this spring, we've also been doing a lot of 13 personnel as well, which has been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. So I won't speak any more to the 13 personnel. I'll save that for the season. But I got to be ready to do a lot of everything. I have to block, I have to pass pro, I have to run routes, and I have to be able to catch the ball, and that's just what it comes down to. If Chip wants to head me out there on that field, I got to be able to run routes, I got to be able to make people miss, and I got to be able to score touchdowns. And when you ask me to block, I'm going to go out there and block 100%, the most I can, the best I can, and work my hardest and go from there. So Michael Mayer is giving us a little bit of insight into what we should expect out of the Las Vegas Raiders. Not only are the Raiders going to utilize this 12 personnel, which if you guys remember last year, Luke Getsy, right, early on, it was like, hey, we're going to utilize a lot of 12 personnel. We never really saw it, right? And it was never really effective. And I feel like the Raiders kind of got away from it pretty quickly. But Chip Kelly is going to run a lot of 12 personnel. This is one of the things that Michael Mayer is not just telling us. If you guys follow some of the reporters at camp have also been saying that the Raiders are utilizing a bunch of 2 tight end sets, which makes sense. This is something that Chip Kelly does. This is something Pete Carroll wants, right? Pete Carroll wants to run the football. He wants to be a team that you can play defense. You're not turning the ball over, right? You're being a little conservative with the football. You're not doing things that are going to lose you the game. And having 2 tight ends in there allows you to kind of do that. So 12 personnel, if you guys don't know this, is 1 running back, two tight ends, and of course you have two wide receivers as well. But he also said that we might even be running a lot of 13 personnel. That's absolutely wild to me. You know, teams generally don't run 13 personnel unless you're going to be, unless you're in a spot where it's like, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, red zone. Most teams aren't utilizing three tight ends, but some teams do utilize three tight ends. The Dolphins utilize three tight ends. The 49ers utilize three tight ends. And those two teams run an offensive scheme at the wide zone, very similar to Chip Kelly. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders ran 13 personnel as well. We also do have to keep in mind 13 personnel doesn't mean you're going to line up all three of those tight ends, essentially next to the tackles, right at the inline position. One of those guys can be lined up in the slot, right? Brock Bowers can get out there in the slot. Ian Thomas, who's one of the tight ends we have, he can line up at fullback. And then Michael Mayer can line up at the inline traditional tight end spot. So 13 personnel doesn't mean everybody's just lined up on the line of scrimmage. But I would not be surprised if the Raiders just kind of got large and big and put in Brock and Thomas and, Michael Mayer. I wouldn't be surprised if they went down this route because we're going to run the football a lot this season, right? We are going to 100% run the football. And I love the fact that Michael Mayer is kind of telling us what we should expect as we get into the season. And again, I love the fact that we're not actually trading him. To me, that's the biggest report that's coming out, is that the Raiders are going to keep this guy and they are not ultimately going to trade him. I'm really excited for this year, man. I think the Raiders offense can be really, really, really good. There's two other updates that I want to just quickly kind of get into. This doesn't really impact the Raiders. One is obviously a former Raiders tight end, Darren Waller, is actually coming out of retirement. And he has officially been traded. He's with the Giants, but the Dolphins essentially finalized a trade with the Giants for tight end Darren Waller, who obviously is coming out of retirement. Kind of crazy that the Raiders were able to get a 3rd round pick for Darren Waller. And I believe we used that pick for Trey Tucker. But what the trade here was basically the Giants traded a 7th round pick for a 6th round pick. It was just a swap of 6th and 7th. The Giants got the 6th round pick, but they also had to give up Darren Waller while the Dolphins got a 7th round pick. So essentially, you're just swapping 6th and 7th round picks, and Waller just kind of gets thrown in there. And the Raiders got a 3rd round pick for Waller just about a year and a half ago. Maybe it was like 2.5 years ago. But to me, that's an absolute crazy thing that the Raiders were able to kind of get. But with that being stated, Darren Waller is coming back into the NFL. Now, I'm actually excited for Darren Waller, right? I know he retired a little early. He actually was on a podcast recently where he talked about why he retired. He said that the coach basically had him lead block for the running back. And after he made those plays where he blocked, right, as like a lead blocker, he realized, like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I still playing football? It's kind of crazy to me because, there are people out there that just aren't very, they're just not, they don't love football, right? And Darren Waller is definitely one of those guys. But I will also state this, when you leave football, you're out of the game for maybe a year or two, you start to realize that, hey, maybe I do love football, right? Maybe I do miss playing football. And some people are saying, hey, maybe he went broke in like that year or 2 year span. I don't think that that's the case. Sometimes you realize what football means once you're away from football, right? And I think that kind of happened with Darren Waller. And I do hope he has success in the NFL. I hope he goes for 1,500 yards this season for the Dolphins. I hope Mike McDaniel takes advantage of the skill set that Darren Waller has. I think the guy is a good tight end. He beat some odds that a lot of people don't beat. And again, at the end of the day, I have no hate for anybody. So I hope it works out for Darren Waller. And then finally, the last update I want to kind of get into. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't really impact the Raiders, but there's really not a lot of things to talk about. So we're going to just talk about some sports-related stuff. There's some new details that apparently emerged to why the Raiders and other teams likely passed on quarterback Shedeur Sanders. And reading this report, it's pretty crazy to kind of hear this stuff, because you would think that a guy like Shedeur Sanders would understand this is like basic-ass stuff. And there's nothing wrong with teams kind of asking you these things. When I was at the Hula Bowl, and I went to the Hula Bowl this past January, when I was at the Hula Bowl, I kind of realized how, just how crazy detailed that teams kind of get into it. They had the Hula Bowl, I forget the hotel name, but it was in Florida. They had this hotel reserved, and essentially when you'd walk through the lobby, there's just NFL scouts everywhere. And they're sitting there on their phones. They're texting players to come sit down, come meet with them. There's some players already kind of there. And you can just listen to some of the questions that some of these scouts are asking. And as they're kind of taking notes, and the questions are they're crazy questions, right? Like, I don't have exact details on like certain questions, but like, they'll ask you about things that happen when you're like a sophomore in high school, for example, right? And for Shedeur Sanders to be kind of asked these questions and then react to the way he reacts, to me is kind of crazy, because this is something that you would think, if you want to be an NFL quarterback, this is something someone would have trained you on, right? And, maybe Coach Prime should have helped him with this, or maybe this guy just doesn't understand. I don't know what it is, but let's talk about this. So I'm going to read you guys the report. So the New York Giants, they gave players an install, and there are mistakes intentionally put in that install. Shedeur Sanders didn't catch those mistakes, and he got called out on it, and it didn't go well after that. Shedeur Sanders was pissed that they did that to him. This is what Albert Breer is putting out there. That alone is pretty crazy, right? Not the fact that teams are going to put mistakes on these installs, but it's the fact that Shedeur Sanders didn't catch them, and then they called him out on it, and then he got angry about it. To me, that's absolutely wild, because that's part of being an NFL quarterback, right? You're installing an offense, or maybe it's a one play or two plays. You got to be able to recognize, and I'll give you guys an example of what this means. So let's say a wide receiver on the left side of the field is running a post route. Well, with that post route, you're going to pair up a route with that, right? Maybe it's a out route. Maybe it's, maybe it's a skinny post, and there's a guy on the inside that's going deep to clear it out. This is how the NFL designs their routes. And, you're not going to run like two post routes, right? That wouldn't make sense. But that's what they're kind of saying, is that they put plays like that on here, and he didn't catch that. Hey, you don't do this, right? That's a very, very common thing in the NFL, and even like college and high school, it's really common. But then there's another example. Shedeur Sanders throws a bad interception. It was a deep throw early on in the game. They go into the meeting and they show the interception, and they say, what happened here? Shedeur Sanders responded, well, I like to get into rhythm earlier in the game. They get into it over that, and his conclusion is, well, maybe I'm not a fit for you. So Shedeur Sanders is saying to this team that, hey, I'm not a fit for you, right? He's saying that to a team. And the person who told me that story was like, I've never heard this before. It was in a combine interview when you're just going for team to team, trying to put your best foot forward. So to me, those are some crazy things that are coming out with Shedeur Sanders. When early on in the process, some of you guys remember this because you guys followed this channel. I was out on Shedeur Sanders really, really, really early on in the process. Probably as back far as like November. I was like, there's just no way this guy's a first round pick. There's no way he's going to be the first quarterback taken. And a lot of people were disagreeing with that, right? A lot of people are like, Shedeur's definitely going to be the first quarterback. He's a really, really good quarterback. And the reason why I was not sold on Shedeur is not necessarily because of this stuff, right? Because this stuff you don't really know, right? Unless you actually speak to Shedeur, if he's this type of person or not. To me, the reason why I was not sold on Sanders was because he was a slow processor, and he was not great when it came to deep passes and ball placement, like 15 plus yards past the line of scrimmage, right? Like 15 yards, 20, 25 yards. And people will always say, hey, completion percentage is crazy. How you say he's not an accurate quarterback? Stats don't back up actual tape, right? So it's not the same thing. Stats and tape aren't the same. If you throw a 3-yard pass, you're 100% completion percentage. If you throw a 90-yard pass and it's incomplete, you're 0% completion percentage. But you threw 90 yards. That's crazy, right? So when you think about it, right, stats don't always match the actual tape. And with Sanders, I always felt like his tape definitely was not, as good as you would want of a first-round pick. I felt like Cam Ward definitely showed flashes of that. I wasn't 100% sold on him either, but I did think that if you're a quarterback-needy team, like the Titans, it made sense to go with Cam Ward. We'll see how that kind of works out. To me, this is just a crazy report that's coming out with Shedeur. But I do hope he still has success as well. I hope for him, for his own self, I hope he ends up having success with the Browns. If I'm a betting man, I think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I think he's a lot more fine-tuned. I do think he has some leadership things that, you know, he's not like super far out there. Sometimes that could be negative as well. People might not want to, you know, play for you. It's kind of like Tua Tagovailoa. It's kind of that effect as well, where you're not like a true leader out there, right? But I do like Dylan Gabriel, who's obviously also with the Browns. The Browns have a couple different quarterbacks they can go forward with. I think they have like 7 quarterbacks: Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, the 2 rookie quarterbacks. We'll see what ends up happening, but that's it for the day, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I will definitely not be posting content every day until training camp starts. I'll probably skip a day in between just because there's not a lot of information that's out there, and I don't want to make videos that don't make sense, right? I just want to kind of keep it football without putting a lot of rumors and those type of things out there. Let me know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up, subscribe. If there's something you guys want to see, if there's a video recommendation, put it down below, man. All right. Here's a video recommendation for you, Sanjit. Put it down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.